I wasn't thinking specifically about the one song that's a reference to at 6:21 a.m.
What? Did y'all see that shit with the Blackpink video?
No.
The Lovesick Girls?
No.
So I think, was it Jenny was in like a nurse outfit because she says something about like a doctor couldn't cure him. I don't know. But then there was like a lot of backlash from like Korean nurses and doctors, like you're perpetuating like sexy stereotypes or something, and so they had to like take down the original video and edit that out.
Have they watched K-pop videos? I mean,
it was specifically the nurse thing. I don't know.
That's so weird. Certainly, yeah. I mean, if somebody wanted to make an argument that like, let's move towards a better, less objectifying future for K-pop videos, I would be like, yeah, sure. But Blackpink is one of the like less. I don't know. They usually have really interesting costume design that is not 100%. On
October 5th, the Korean Health Medical Workers Union issued a statement scrutinizing the wardrobe decision. The cap, tight and short skirt and high heels are completely different from an actual nurse uniform. The outfit and portrayal directly imitate the typical sexual stereotype and excuse it as a simple costume. They're really out here like my job is not a costume.
I don't know.
That seems a little bit.
Even though nurses are professional healthcare workers, for the sole reason that there are more women in the profession, they have been subject to sexual objectification and derogatory portrayals, expressing doubts about their professionalism.
They're not wrong.
They've been fighting for a long time to change this.
That stuff is. I mean, it's sure. The interesting part is that the nurse outfit that she wore, while not the same as what actual nurses wear, it's not as bad as I was even expecting it to be. Like it's I don't know.
It's dumb.
I mean, the thing is that I get where they're coming from, and I think it's great to. I would have perhaps framed it differently as like, hey, this is an example of this thing occurring, not like we condemn this, but more like it's important to keep in mind as you watch this video that these things are true, because women in Korea have been fighting for a long time for more, fair portrayals and less objectification. But it's a weird place to take that shot, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shall we light this sock?
Yep. It's full and ready to go.
Let's rip these nails, baby.
Oh God. Let's hammer this knife into our brains.
Hello, and welcome to a very uncomfortable episode of the Gaming Fix podcast on episode 142 on October 10th. I'm so uncomfortable. October 10th, 2020. I am your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite noodle. I am joined today by Alex.
Oh God. Being put on the spot for a favorite noodle is hard.
Yeah.
It's al dente.
That's not a type of noodle.
No, it's a joke on hard. It was like noodles, al dente.
Gotcha.
It's still like a little.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's still early here.
Let's say a penne is all right, and a rotini is pretty good.
Okay. Allison.
A quality bowl of ramen is probably my favorite.
Okay, are we talking like thin, like thick? You want soft or like firm?
Whatever the chef wants to make. I don't know.
Omakase. Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And Pat.
Yeah, I would say a ramen or it's tough. You definitely not an Italian noodle as much as I eat a fair amount of rotini. That's probably my favorite Italian noodle, but but it's going to be either a ramen, a yakisoba, or a chow mein, because chow mein, highly underrated noodle. A lot of times chow mein gets relegated to like a side dish or like the little bit extra, but chow mein is a delicious noodle on its own without even like additives. So
What about how do y'all feel about udon?
udon is good too.
I like udon.
I like
a lot.
every Asian noodle more than every Western noodle.
I'd say that's probably about
have
accurate. Yeah.
I have a problem with like some noodles where they're just like, if they're too wet, too soft, like an udon, they're so like
Udon
it's
can
just,
get really
there's,
soft.
There's
Harder
too
to
much,
prepare. It's harder to prepare.
and it's or like
When it-
somen, which is like a very like a thin noodle, and they have this. So they've got these restaurants in Japan in like the Kagoshima area where you put. There's like a thing on your table, and water just circulates through it, and it spins like just goes around, and you put the noodles in it, and then you just like stick your chopsticks in, and the noodles go by, and you just collect noodles and then pull them out and then like eat them.
Okay, I want to
But
go
they're
to this
like-
place.
They're real like slippery, and like it's, I don't know, it's a texture thing for me, and it's just not right.
I would really enjoy that, but I'm really bad at that would be very embarrassing for me, because while I'm a relatively proficient chopstick user, I don't know that I could get noodles rotating around.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, they come by, and you're just like, they're just hitting your chopsticks, and then you're pulling them out. Like it's, you're not like,
that sounds
you're not
challenging
like
to me.
Mr. Miyagi, like grabbing each noodle one by one.
Maybe you're not.
Yeah. Have y'all ever had Filipino spaghetti?
No, I don't think so.
No, but I've seen that isn't that like more of like a fast food thing there.
It can be, but like
Like
the
a
sauce
Skyline?
the sauce they use is like really sweet.
I don't know if I'd like that.
It's
I don't know if I'd
weird.
like that. I like a
That's-
real savory and a real spicy noodle. I don't like a sweet like noodle dish. I don't really like sweet that much with my noodles.
Japanese tomato sauce tends to be pretty sweet, so it's probably not that dissimilar.
I guess
That makes sense. I mean, you're there and you're pretty sweet, so
That's all the tomato sauce I eat.
I was at an Asian market yesterday on the way back from getting a COVID test, which I didn't explicitly need, but wanted to reset my contact tracing. Basically, don't worry too much if you have to get one of those. It's not that bad. It's uncomfortable, but it doesn't hurt. They do touch your brain though. It's not true.
I know, but
If you go back and listen to last week's episode, you'll notice Pat has a completely different personality this week.
They do go all the way in with a Q-tip, but it's not as bad as it sounds, believe it or not. I wouldn't worry about it if you have to get one at some point. But I on the way back from that, I was going right by the family market, and so I was like, oh, let me stop and get some sake for this weekend, because I've been watching anime and they were drinking sake in it, and my partner was like, that looks good. I've never had sake before. I had not been to that Asian market before. I didn't realize it was an enormous one, which was rad. And I'm going to shop there more, but I got very overwhelmed looking at the noodle aisle, because they had like, I don't know, there was like 30 or 40 different kinds of noodles that I wanted to try. And then they also had the section that has the refrigerated and frozen noodles, which is not something you ever see at like Western markets, normal grocery stores. And so I was like, oh my God, I don't have time to peruse this bounty of noodles. So perhaps I'll have to go back and we'll have like a noodle cast or something.
You do a hot pot, and then at the end, when you've just got like the broth left, you put in the udon noodles or the soba noodles, and it's just like soaks up that extra broth, and is a nice way to end the meal.
They have
Hot tip.
they have a hot pot thing there. I couldn't find it, but my coworker was telling me about it. They have a hot pot thing there. I had not heard of this before, but they're like hot pots that you just stick on the stove. They're like instant hot pots, not instant, but they're like, I guess they're like, you make them on the stove and
Everything's in it, and you just like put it on the
that's the
stove.
impression
or-
that I got, is that it works kind of like Jiffy Pop, but for hot pot. I don't know. It sounded wild to me. He said it's amazing. He said it's better than restaurant hot pot, but I don't know.
Oh.
Can't confirm that I'm understanding what he was saying correctly because I couldn't find him and I gave up because I was
Sounds like shenanigans.
I was like, there were people there who were who clearly shopped there regularly. Again, I hadn't been to that location before. And there are people there that clearly shop there regularly that I was just like standing slack-jawed in the noodle aisle, and it's a huge store, but very thin aisles. So they couldn't get around me, especially with distancing rules. So I was like,
oh yeah.
I need to leave because I'm making it harder for other people to do their shopping.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works because I feel like there's an independently run Asian grocery store near me, and how like the kind of disparity in customer base, like a large portion of it is people who are doing their regular shopping there, and this has the groceries that they need. And then the other portion is like weebs going like, ooh, what is this? And so it's like, you need to.
Yes. And well, I don't
Not saying you're the weeb.
No,
but...
I don't typically think of myself as a weeb, but also that is what I was doing. So I fit that description yesterday.
So one last noodle thought. Have y'all ever had the samyang ramen, the extremely spicy Korean?
No, because I don't think I'm good, spice tolerant enough.
I have become very spice tolerant over the last few years. I seek it out heavily, but I don't like kimchi. And I feel like samyang.
It's not kimchi. It's more like gochujang-y.
Okay, that's good to know. They definitely had it at the grocery store, so I'll have to check it out because
it's pretty great and also pretty intense. Anyways,
the thing I need to know. I'm sorry. This is the thing. The thing I need to
video game podcast we do.
The thing I need. We don't have that many video games to talk about this week. The thing I need help understanding for a lot of the ramen that is not packaged for American consumption, but that is clearly imported, but I'm a vegetarian, right, or a pescatarian at least, so I would like to try samyang, but it's very hard to determine what of the flavors are vegetarian, because they have things like most of their flavors say hot chicken on them. Some of those don't actually have chicken in them.
That's just kind of a flavor.
But it's hard to know how
are you
to,
like a no chicken broth type vegetarian?
I prefer to avoid it if I can.
Okay.
If I wouldn't get upset if I had it at a restaurant by mistake, but I would not purchase something knowing that. So that's my struggle.
I mean, a lot of I can't speak to Korean stuff, but you got your shoyu base, your soy sauce base, your miso base.
Miso base,
It's easy to find vegetarian ramen to eat, whether it's at the Western grocery store or at they had multiple things that say vegan in big words on the thing, but and we have a local ramen restaurant that we go to that is really, really, really good, and they do pretty much anything that doesn't have, it's not like katsu, they'll do do it with tofu and veggie broth. So
we have some breaking news.
Oh, good.
I've sent it to our group chat so you all can read it, but Charles Martinet just sent out a tweet. Quote,
he voted.
I have officially voted. Yippee! If you haven't yet, please go vote. And if you haven't registered, do it ASAP. Hey,
this guy's middle name. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Charles Andre.
I like that you
Martinet.
specifically tagged me in this. I like that.
I'm a little
You just look
nervous.
so happy.
We haven't gotten our ballots yet in Washington, and I'm kind of like, hey, y'all want to
I voted
break me
a
off some
while
of that
ago.
ballot?
Yeah, I got my ballot sent off this week.
Yeah, I very specifically had to not vote for Kanye West, so
That's good.
But
I did not. But
yeah, of course. But I don't know why, Pat, but break me off a piece of that ballot. Just remind me of how it's made, that old TV show, and how
That's fine.
everything that you ever use or consume or whatever starts off as a bigger version of whatever it is, and then just gets chopped up into smaller versions of itself.
Yeah, they have to shave the ballots off of the ballot tree.
Exactly.
And then
So it
mail
starts
them
as
to
one
people.
big ballot, and then you're just chopping off the smaller ballots.
There's a shortage of ballots this year because of the forest fires.
Yeah, that makes sense why it's not in Washington.
Okay, Charles Martinet's Twitter feed is the most wholesome thing I think I've ever seen.
Welcome to the Charles Martinet Twitter podcast, where we review
And
the Twitter.
and spicy Korean ramen cast.
Yep. But this week, I'm sorry to disappoint our listeners, but this week we're covering video games.
Oh,
Not just Charles Martinet.
A couple video games here and there. So since we're on the topic of noodles and ramen and Japan, Alex, how about you start us off with your Japanese games or anime or whatever it is you brought this week?
that's transition. Nice.
We're adjacent. Let's keep it. Let's roll with it.
Let's start with the actual video game that I have completed before diving into the other stuff. Which we started talking about it last week, and that was 13 Sentinels. So I don't know if any of y'all have checked it out since we talked about that, but I have in that time finished 13 Sentinels. So I've probably completed it in about 31-ish hours, somewhere around there. So 30 plus or minus 2, let's say. And what I was saying last week was basically that it is visual novel, but with like a really interesting art style, which is kind of Danganronpa-y in terms of like how it looks during Danganronpa cutscenes, but that's the actual game. And then you have the RTS section. So that's the short version if you didn't listen to last week's cast. And it's kind of a time travel-y story. Like, well, it's very heavily, explicitly a time travel story, where your characters are traveling between different eras, and they're very set. Like, there's 1945, like right at the end of the World War II in Japan. There is 1985. Then you get to like 2040 something, and then like 2100 shows up at some point. So it's kind of Chrono Trigger in that way, in that like they are discrete areas and times and stuff that you're going to. It's not like you're saying, oh, I'm going to go to 1 or 2 years after or 1 or 2 years later. And you actually have pretty much no agency in the story. Like, you're just kind of watching it unfold and occasionally interacting, but very rarely, because it's a visual novel. But its story is definitely what you're there for. And it does something that I appreciate in a lot of storytelling, where it's a complicated story. Like, it's complex. There's lots of moving parts and lots of stuff going on. And it just kind of puts everything out there. Like, it doesn't contextualize it. It's just like, yep, this is what it is in this world. And we're just going to talk openly about like this technology that, you know, if you have no context for it, that makes no sense. Or like they're talking about these characters and other people you've never met as though like everyone is familiar with them, kind of stuff. And that kind of gets confusing. Like, you're just like losing track of what's happening a lot of the time. But once you start getting near the end and all the neurons actually start connecting in your brain, then it's like, oh, okay, everything that's been going on here actually makes sense. So the way it ends up being split up is you have 2 real sections, like we said, the RTS and the story mode. I don't know what you want to call it, but those are actually like 2 different menu options, and it'll show percentages at the bottom of how far you've gotten into each. And when you're in the story mode, like, you can select one of these 13 characters at a time, and you're going through their stories, and then eventually you'll hit like, oh, this character's story is blocked until you complete this other condition. Like, once you reach this other character's story that hits this beat, or you have to have 80% completion in like 6 of the other protagonist stories in order to get this one. So it's how they're keeping their timelines kind of in check, so you're not getting spoiled, or you're not getting too far ahead in one person's story and then like, you know, having twists and turns revealed in other people's story. So it's actually really well formed in that sense. And I think the story they tell in the end is extremely creative, and like I will give them huge props for that. But I will say that it didn't really move me that much. I was like, yeah, this is really good, but it didn't blow my mind, because I think even something I said on last week's podcast ended up kind of being exactly where that story went. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was a bit more predictable than I expected. So that was a bit of a bummer, but yeah, overall it's good. I don't know. It might be on my game of the year list, maybe around number 10 or 9, but it's worth playing. I would say maybe wait for a sale if you want, but I think it's worth supporting Vanillaware because they did make something pretty unique with it.
All right. Well, does anyone have any thoughts on 13 Sentinels? Questions?
I'm interested in playing it at some point. I think I'll probably wait for a sale. I would love to see, because did Dragon's Crown ever come to other platforms? I feel like it did, didn't it?
I'm not sure.
Or did it never make it off of? Can't remember. I mean, I think those are. Yeah, it didn't. I don't think it did. Those are Sony funded.
PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita.
Yeah. Okay. Then it'll probably never leave the PlayStation, which is kind of a bummer because I feel like of all the platforms that I have with which to play a visual novel, the PS4 is the one I'd want to do it on the least, I guess, other than maybe the Xbox. But I would, I mean, it sounds like the story sounds kind of interesting, especially with the jumping between. I didn't realize that it had, like, you went to 1945 and the 80s and stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah, like one of the interesting things that happens is that, and this is very early story stuff. Like,
yeah, it's fine.
First
I know
hour.
the general premise. It's like, yeah.
But like, there's like first hour stuff. So don't worry, this isn't a heavy spoiler. But like, you go back to 1945. Like, you go to one of those characters, and like you see the characters. Like this dude, he just got in the army for that, and he's like talking about how he wants to take the war to the Americans and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then like there's basically like a bombing run that goes on a city, like, and they go and inspect all the damage and all this stuff, and like it's pretty brutal in some ways. And then he unexpectedly time travels, like he doesn't know it happens, and then suddenly he's in this like place full of skyscrapers and stuff. He's like, what happened? This isn't Japan. Like, am I in America? Like, what the fuck? And then he looks around. He's like, what? Is this a dream? And then he's like, wait, but all these signs are in Japanese. These people are speaking Japanese. What's going on? And like that kind of stuff is pretty cool. So like the fish out of water stuff they do is pretty interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, I know that it has to do with like a kind of classic, at points anyway, has to do with a kind of classic like mechs versus a universal enemy kind of thing, which when I found that out, I was like, I don't know about if I care about that. But
it gets more interesting than that.
Yeah, that's good to know. That was the biggest thing. Is I watched some early of RTS gameplay and it looked extremely boring, and they weren't even really like showing what the enemy was. They were just like explaining what they were in the text, and I was like, this does nothing for me at all. But at the same time, the story sounds like if it gets more interesting than that it would be something I'd want to check out.
What the enemies are becomes a major plot point. And
okay.
Like their origin and why they're there. Like that kind of stuff becomes major. And also, speaking of the RTS section, I came up with a strategy that was basically foolproof, and it was kind of ridiculous how powerful it was. It carried me through like every battle in that game at the hardest difficulty except for one.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of ridiculous.
And I mean, I don't think it's like it sounds like it's sort of a Pacific Rim situation when it comes to the existential threat. At least that is the implication from the released gameplay footage that Sony put out of the game being played from a very early battle. But I don't know how much more complex than that it gets. So
fairly. And it's hard to talk about without spoiling.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have to spoil it. But when I heard about it as being like, oh, 13 different characters and there's some time travel, that sounds really interesting. And then when I saw that, like, the premise that they were showing in that video, I was like, well, this is kind of tired. But knowing that it gets more engaging and complex is good to know.
Yeah. Is it something you might check out, Allison?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in checking it out. I'm kind of thinking about waiting for a sale, but it does definitely sound really interesting.
And to be clear, Umurangi Generation has a similar premise, and that is a game that I really enjoyed. So, and its premise is not, they don't go into the lore around that stuff. It is purely a game about interacting with human beings that are dealing with the consequences of that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
So yeah.
Anyways, yeah,
All
13
right.
Sentinels, pretty cool.
Well, from visual novel to I was trying to think of some dumb thing to call it, but it's an anime, right? That's the other.
I mean,
no,
this
it's
is
another
a
visual
visual
novel,
novel.
right?
No, I'm
you have another
doing-
visual novel on here.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go from visual novel to visual novel.
No, because I forgot. Like, it's different. It's not the thing you talked about last week.
Yep.
Allison has the same name, but it's also a visual novel. It's visual novels all the way down.
Yeah.
Technically, they're part of the same series. Yeah, there was an anime made out of the visual novel I'm playing, but I haven't watched it because apparently it's a mess.
Good to know.
Yeah, so
Is it like connected to Higurashi? I know
So-
So,
last week we talked about the 2020 remake of Higurashi and how Alice and I are both old fans because we're both old and fans.
Yep.
And we watched it a long time ago, and that first episode was like pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the first episode of the original series, and we're like, wow, that's really cool. Like little subtle differences here and there where it's like, oh, it's interesting. I wonder what they're going to do with it. Like, what other subtle differences they'll make. On Thursday, I guess it was, I got a message from Allison who had started watching the new episode being like, just all caps, just like, you should probably watch this. And I did, and then immediately said to Pat, don't watch episode 2 of Higurashi because this is a remake in the Final Fantasy VII sense.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, it's cool that
sure
they
is.
watching. I went back and started watching the original show after we talked about it last week, and I'm really enjoying it. But I definitely watched the first episode and was like, it's cool that they're reanimating this, but also it doesn't feel like it super needs it to me. Like, it doesn't look bad. It's fine. It's totally watchable. There's nothing about it that is like, oh, this art style. I mean, I don't know. It's fine. So I was a little surprised that they went to the and like the story is very coherent, unlike FMA and Dragon Ball Z. So like there's a lot of Dragon Ball Z just has a lot of extra stuff. It's not that it's not coherent, but anyway, it made sense that like they did Kai and Brotherhood because you could argue that those improve on the originals. I mean, Brotherhood surely does. But hearing that it's
right, sorry,
Full Metal Alchemist, yeah, sorry, I'm comparing
because sorry,
Yeah.
the second season of Higurashi is Kai too. I was like, wait, what?
no, no, Dragon Ball Z Kai. Those were
Dragon Ball Kai, please.
Okay. But anyway, I was surprised and kind of as I was watching the first season, I was like, I bet that this new thing is a Final Fantasy VII remake situation, which is interesting because the original, I'm really enjoying it. I haven't really had the like, it's gotten to a point where it's starting to feel like dots are connecting, and I'm kind of like, this is a really cool story. It's not like completely like blowing my mind in the like, holy fuck, oh my god sense yet. So obviously I have more to finish with it. But it doesn't super feel like there are things they're going to do that are just going to be like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to finish it and see. But Umineko is also a When They Cry thing. It's just seagulls instead of cicadas.
So
Sea
what I was
cats.
what I was going to get to is with the Higurashi remake. They introduced like the actual, like what they do in anime a lot of the time is they won't have the opening with the music and all the animations for the season until the second episode, and that's what they did here. And there's some scenes in that which people on forums and Reddit and stuff are like, that's a character from Umineko.
Oh, great.
And people are like,
great.
What is going on? And
Or like, wait, that building looks like the building from Umineko.
Yeah,
So,
so-
it's like people
so-
are speculating that there might be connections, which
yeah.
Oh, no.
And
I know, right?
and
have
So
time for
Alex and I
this.
are sending each other messages like, do we need to know Umineko now?
God, am I going to
Yeah,
have to play
so-
Siconia also?
no,
I
don't
that's
think
like
so.
that's like set like thousands of years in the future. But
I mean,
but yeah, so watch Higurashi. Maybe wait on the new one if you haven't watched the original.
Yeah, I
it
think
starts
we
with-
were trying to
it's-
recommend last week. We were like, oh yeah, anybody can jump in, and then like I think both of us sent messages to Pat that were like, don't watch it.
I was not going to anyway because I kind of had an inkling that what was going to happen was going to happen. And I like the original a lot, so
It's just
It's-
funny.
it's
How we're both
very
like,
funny.
no, Pat.
Yeah. So all of that to say, it's really good, and the stuff they're doing is crazy, and it's basically a stealth season 3.
yeah.
Which is
Which-
fucking awesome. But especially this many years later. But yeah, so the fact that there are potentially Umineko characters and locations and stuff like that showing up prompted me to get back into Umineko because I started it last year, maybe 2 years ago.
I
And
could have sworn this was talked about on this cast at some point.
It was because I gave it a start and I was like, yeah, I'm going to try and play through this, but it's like, it's a big commitment. It's like,
Oh my God, is it a big commitment?
it's like, I think the questions arc is somewhere around 30 or 40 hours, and then the answer arc is around 40 hours.
Yeah.
So it's about 80 hours total.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So yeah, it's
Very brutal.
So I am further in this time than I was that time. I'm about 4 hours in, and
It
it's
Okay.
good. It's catching me. It's the story has started going places towards like, oh, okay, yeah, now these characters are settling in and making sense, and
if it ends up being actually relevant, I'll probably go back to it at some point because I don't think I can squeeze in 80 hours of visual novel into my life right now. In addition to trying to watch this anime.
Totally understand.
yeah, it's kind of a huge undertaking, and the only reason I'm doing it is because I'm such a big fan of the original show.
Sure.
And
Yeah, and I've always wanted to go through
same.
Umineko, especially since people who like Umineko love Umineko.
yeah,
So
they won't,
it's like
they won't shut up about it.
yeah.
I will
It's one of those things I've always wanted to kind of experience.
I will put forth that I would argue that is true of every visual novel that we've talked about on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Umineko, I feel like Umineko
one-
fans
that one in
go
particular.
hard for Umineko.
Yeah, and it got way wider appeal in a mainstream sense than Higurashi ever did in the visual novels because it got the PS3 release, which got like full voice acting throughout and like completely new art and everything like that. So, anyways, don't have to talk about it too much right now, just because I'm only 4 hours into an 80-hour thing, and it's interesting. It's good. The seagulls make sense. Just like the Ciconias make sense, or cicadas make sense in
God.
the cicadas make sense in Higurashi, but
They
it's
haven't yet.
because
I'm looking forward to that happening.
they will.
It's cicadas because they're always fucking making noise here, man. That's why. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, it does. It I don't remember if they call it explicitly out in season 2, but you'll start noting that when they make the sounds, there are certain things happening. Anyways, similar thing is happening with this in the Seagulls because it is set in like a private island by this extremely rich family, and they got to this place and the seagulls, which are usually there, are not making any noise, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? So there's a bunch of mysteries afoot, and it's doing a lot of like class warfare kind of stuff, which is really interesting. So,
Yeah, that is
anyways,
interesting.
Yeah. I'll probably be talking about Umineko when I'm finished it. I won't provide regular updates because it's going to be a long time. It'll probably take me about a month or two to finish. So.
All right. Well, enjoy that. Hopefully it goes well and you come out the other side a changed person. Hopefully for the better.
Yeah, we'll see. Those stories get dark.
Well,
They're dark.
yeah, Pat?
I don't know. I'm finding it dark, but also dark in the good horror movie sense, or good horror story sense of dark, where it's not. Some anime is like really mean in the way that it's dark and is like trying to be upsetting and trying to hurt your feelings, and that's something I fucking hate when horror does that. So, and I don't think Higurashi does that. I think it has moments.
No.
Like we alluded to, things with fingernails and
God.
stabbing, and those are really you make a lot of faces, and it's like, oh my God. And you certainly care about the characters, but I'm not watching it getting depressed. It's just interesting. So
Yeah, I feel like it earns everything.
Exactly,
Is the
yeah,
thing with
yeah.
Higurashi.
It is dark, but not pessimistic.
yeah,
Right.
that's a good way to put it. I think that's the key. And I like horror that is good. Horror, in my opinion, is not pessimistic. I think people mistake there are some very popular pessimistic horror out there that people mistake for being really good, and I have pretty strong opinions to the opposition of that. And so, it's a classic, like the original Saw is a really great story of like perseverance and human ingenuity and spirit, like that's to me what good horror kind of does, and I think Higurashi does that for sure.
All right. Well, Allison, you've also got this visual novel on here.
Yeah, so
You want to talk about that?
So I was trying to decide whether I wanted to play the Higurashi visual novel or the Umineko one, and I went for Higurashi first. So this is going to be a thing where I'm trying to play that in an Umineko. I don't think I'll try to play it before like the show's finished or anything. Like I'm still going to watch the new season of Higurashi. But I just knew that some of the arcs in the visual novels are different than in the show. So I wanted to give that a shot. And it's been really interesting so far. I'm only a couple hours in, but it does a really good job of setting the atmosphere and the mood, which is, I think, what the biggest draw of these are. And it's interesting seeing a lot of the side content too. Like there's one part where I don't think it's very spoilery to say that there is a lot of the things that are kicked off in this overarching story are based off of this one initial murder and dismemberment. And one of the things that you do at the end of each like little individual chunk of story is that there's extra bits that you can read that aren't 100% necessary, but are kind of more flavor text. And so there's some really interesting things where you're reading this tabloid article and it gets really dark, and then suddenly you move to reading a separate section of the tabloid, and like the music changes, sound effects change, and it just completely is like kind of jarring, but in an interesting way. And another one was reading a letter written by the one of the like higher ups in the village that they're in. So you see a lot of the bias from that. So it's really interesting writing. From what I understand about the origin of this was started as like just selling stuff at like Comic Cat, I think.
Yeah,
like
just on CDs. He was just like, I'm just gonna go there, set up a booth, and sell these on CDs to whoever wants them.
Right. It was the writer who just completely made it up. Like it really just grew from the strength of its writing, because it did not grow from the strength of its art.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
But
it's
it's,
endearingly terrible.
it is endearingly bad. There are a couple of times where I was like, I switched. So if you haven't seen it, the original art that he did is not good. It's like Alex said, is endearingly bad. So this new this release of it has updated art. So, but you can switch between them at will. So,
So the advertised art on Steam then is the newer art.
Probably.
yes,
And it should be
Oh, I
noted-
see here the shift. Yeah, wow, that is bad.
Oh, it's awful. I think I mentioned it during Sequoia.
Holy shit.
That they're referred to as ham hands.
ham hands.
Like,
Yes, that's so bad.
And
No
there's
offense.
certain
I mean, the
ones-
story's great, so I'm not.
Right.
I
It's
don't.
funny.
The Seconia art is what put me off of having any interest in that originally. Like pretty heavily, but because I'm liking the story so much, I'm not saying that I'm gonna this is not me declaring I'm gonna play it, but
And that's him like, wow, you've really,
I mean that's after years, right?
Seconia is him improved.
yeah, it's like, you've done a good job. You've worked really hard on that, huh? Higurashi's art is hot garbage at points.
And I love it. I love
I
it.
do
It's so
too.
bad.
But it's like, but you see, like, okay, so this whole franchise came from this one person selling this at Comiket, like setting up his own booth, and since the art is clearly not the draw, it's clearly on the strength of the writing, and I think that just being not very far into it, you really get that sense of
Yeah.
the writing being so strong.
One thing worth noting on Steam, it was just within like the past month or two that it completely, like, the last arc is now up on Steam, like officially
Yeah.
translated and everything. So now you can actually get the whole pack. As
Right, because they were releasing it piecemeal, arc by arc on Steam, which is, you know, that's how they were able to get it out quicker, but at the same time, like, you know,
I was going to comment that I think it's a nice intro for me as someone who doesn't play a lot of the genre. Like, I installed the first chapter because it's free, and the ability to go like chapter by chapter and say like, oh, I want to play this one this weekend or whatever, it's kind of nice. So, because one thing that is tough about visual novels, as someone who is like very much like on the outer edge of that, of interest in that, is they can be kind of expensive.
yeah,
Very
And
much so.
I wouldn't take away, I'm sure that they, people work hard on them. So I'm certainly not suggesting that like they should sell their game and sell themselves short on it. And if people are paying it who are into the genre, then good for them. But it's very hard for me to look at a $40 visual novel and go like, yes, I'd like to try this, when it's so hit or miss for me, my interest in the genre. And
sure.
I know I'm not gonna read through one that isn't engaging to me. So it's nice that with Higurashi, I can download the first chapter and check it out for free, and then pay, like, right now they're on sale. The first couple chapters are on sale. Pay like $4 to $8 to get the next chapter. It feels a little bit more like checking out a manga, which is cool. I like it.
yeah, especially since you look at like Umineko, and like the first half of the arcs, the question arcs, are $25 on Steam, and the answer arcs are $30. If I remember correctly, I got Umineko on sale, and it was a pretty decent sale from what I remember. But yeah, it is definitely a commitment. Whereas the first chapter here being free, that's, I think, I was looking at it up on How Long to Beat, and it looks like that's going to take you about like 11 or 12 hours. So you should really get a sense for the writing, or if reading this is what
For sure.
something that you want to do.
And I think $25 is pretty. I have spent $25 on games that I've kind of gone like, I don't know, and not felt terrible about it. So it's really more when it gets into the like $40 range that I start to go like, I gotta know I'm gonna at least want to play through this whole thing before I want to spend that kind of money, you know?
Right. And I mean, you'd want to have both the question arcs and the answer arcs, but at the same time, like you could, put $25 into it and realize, hey, it's not for me, and I don't really care to see the
exactly. That's kind of why I think it's a little more palatable when you can buy that stuff in parts.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, I'm sure that we'll have more discussions about Higurashi and Umineko in the upcoming future.
I was never expecting us to go this hard on Higurashi.
I know. I'm so excited. This is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to avoid like every week doing the check-in, I think it would probably be good to consider doing a more Higurashi focused podcast after the new season.
That seems.
I think we probably won't be talking about it much. I think episode 2 of this particular season prompted us to have all these chats because of the stealth drop.
Yeah. And I mean, it'll be 24 weeks until it's done.
22, I guess. Yeah.
22. Yeah. So it won't be until next year, but I think when it wraps up, we'll have to, because I'm gonna finish the first season this week and hopefully finish the second season over the course of next week. So I'll only be a couple episodes behind simulcasting. So.
I have to say also, it's been really fun to see you experience it for the first time, Pat.
It's a really interesting show that if it's going the directions that it appears to be going, I would probably say is not like, I wouldn't be like, oh my fucking God, it's the best show ever, but it's really well made. And I mean, of course it could take a hard left and blow my mind too, but it's the thing that's great about it is that it's just really well written and the characters are portrayed really well. So even if the story doesn't turn into some super, super, super crazy thing, it is really solid and worth your time and enjoyable as long as you can handle some violence. I mean, that's the thing. But
some explicit body horror in that show.
Oh God.
Yeah. But I guess if you're somebody who watches, I am very wary of violence and body horror in anime because sometimes it goes way too fucking far for me. Like it goes into like really disgusting shit. This is like, if you watch Western horror, you'll be fine. It's certainly bloody and violent and gory at times, and there's body horror stuff for sure. And there's some torture stuff in there for sure. But if you have seen Saw, you will be fine. It's no worse than anything that happens in that so far anyway, from what I've seen.
I'm not saying anything.
All right. What was that, Alex?
No, I'm just neither confirming nor denying. It's worse.
Okay. Well, that has been your mandated visual novel anime update. Look forward to, I don't know, like a month from now when something else comes up. Probably that seems about the right time length. The next visual novel, the next anime, whatever it is. But Allison, you've got another game here on this list.
Oh yeah, I don't need to talk about it very much, but I'm still playing a lot of Hades. 8 wins in, and I thought I was like leading the pack here, but then Andre is like, "Oh, I have 9 wins." But yeah,
what can I say?
Still really enjoying it. Still feel like I'm discovering a lot with it. There is like a whole ass fishing mini game in it too.
Jesus. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't know was in there.
Right? So there. I'm trying to learn how to play the lyre in this game. It is like.
Whoa.
Do you have any companions, Allison?
God, what?
Yeah, apparently there's companions.
Holy shit! I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Are you learning to play the Holy Lyre de Hermel? Which is the only lyre I've interacted with. It's in Genshin Impact.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned it last week and everyone made the same faces.
But I didn't know that companions were a thing. Holy shit.
Yeah. So the companions are like, they don't actually like follow you the whole time or something. You don't have like a AI buddy going around, but you do. It's another ability you can use a limited number of times to your runs, and you get them by advancing your relationship with certain people.
I
So
am
I got
trying
one with
to
Meg.
advance my. Man, I need to like work on my relationship with these people, I guess.
Yeah. And like I'm
Works to live
so
by.
you get quests to like kind of resolve some like Greek myths. Like one of the ones we've talked about a lot is you have Orpheus and Eurydice are in the game, and eventually you get a quest that's like reunite them.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how to do that.
trying to get the sequence of conversations you need to have to reunite them is kind of a pain in the ass, because you can only have one conversation with each person per death.
Per run, yeah.
Yeah, and because I have so many, like I'm 9 wins in like 50 runs, and I've got so many quests and relationships built up that the game's like just giving me whatever it thinks is most important, which is like story stuff or that person's personal quest, because I need to talk to a third party to advance the Orpheus and Eurydice quest, but I'm not getting the dialogue I need from them, which is very obnoxious.
It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah. And then even then I'll need to like do some runs until like the right thing happens, and then I have to try and find the right chamber. And so there's a lot going on there. But I had a real good run tonight, so
I've like very much fallen off that game because I haven't had a ton of game time, and it's all been spent on like doing my daily stuff in Genshin Impact. I haven't even advanced the story that much, and then playing Modern Warfare with friends because I'm just like going through the motions at night, it seems like. And part of it's because last weekend I worked all weekend, so I didn't really have much of a weekend. But I would like to play more Hades at some point, and it feels like kind of like I beat it once, and it felt like kind of a iceberg moment where it was like there's a lot more to do here.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm going to have time to do it all before the end of the year, sort of thing. So it was like maybe I shelve it for a little bit and focus on some other stuff and then come back to it later.
Oh, totally. And I think that it's something that you could definitely do that with, but it's yeah, like you said, it's really like the iceberg of like, oh, there is just so much going on here.
Yeah.
yeah. And like the hidden aspects, I've got 2 of the hidden aspects for the weapons, like the spear and the bow and the shield. I've got 3 of them. There's a lot in this game.
Yeah, I only have one of the hidden aspects for the spear, and that is fucking hard.
You have to get the spear one first. The bow one is very good.
Okay. I need to like force myself through the spear one because it gives you a really significant health penalty, which makes it tricky, but it's an interesting aspect. So
you don't have to use it, but like just unlocking it gives you the ability to unlock the other ones.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you just have to do the requirements. They all have like unique requirements and people you have to talk to unlock them. And again, it's like it took me a couple times talking to the person that I had to talk to for the bow to get that to prompt. So, it'll happen. Just talk to everybody.
Yeah.
All the time. It'll happen eventually. And speaking of talking to people, Pat, I hear the last thing you did in your game was have a dialogue encounter.
I got farther than that. The original Baldur's Gate games were extremely formative for me. The first Baldur's Gate game was the first game that I played. I think I played Tetris and Super Mario Land first on a Game Boy, but Baldur's Gate was very nearly the first video game that I ever played. I played it with my dad when I was like 5 years old, 5 or 6. Like I remember when we went and bought it, but it's one of my earliest memories, which may be a weird game for a 5 or 6 year old to enjoy, but I started reading very early. So I was able to kind of read and understand some of the stuff in those games early on. and it was one of the early games that I played too. And then Baldur's Gate 2, same deal. I was a little bit older when that came out, and both of those were really, really important to sort of shaping my enjoyment of video games going forward. And so I've been pretty hotly anticipating Baldur's Gate 3. I've never finished Divinity Original Sin or Original Sin 2, but I've played them. I've done the thing where you start both of them over and over again. And so I have a lot of appreciation for the writing. The pacing of those games is a little bit hard for me to get into from a, like, there's something about running around in RPGs that when it's like running around and talking to people and you do it for like 5 or 6 hours, it's like hard for me to stay engaged for some reason, which is silly because that should be what those, I mean, you should have long sequences running around. But
it's also interesting given how much you like Disco Elysium.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying, is it's a little odd for some reason. Disco Elysium, and I'll tell you what it is. I know what it is. The thing that I appreciate, and this is relevant to Baldur's Gate 3, if you haven't figured it out, which is what I'm talking about, is, and I'm aware that Divinity Original Sin sort of does this. But the thing about Disco Elysium is you make choices that are not just going through the dialogue tree. They are, I'm going to make a skill check here, and it's going to have a material impact on my options going forward. And that is why Disco Elysium is so compelling to me, because every encounter is a new, the dialogue is as deep in a lot of ways as combat can be in some RPGs. And so I think I just had not hit the point in Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 where the dialogue evolved beyond clicking through trees. And that's what is sometimes exhausting for me as an adult. When I was younger, like Morrowind is a game with a bazillion dialogue trees, and I used to click through all those fine. It didn't bother me. But as an adult, so there's something about that act of like, all right, click this tree. I want to ask about this. Let's go into the sub tree and click through and read these 10 pieces of dialogue and then go back and do it 30 times with all these different characters. That is really exhausting to me. Like, I don't know why. Anyway, Baldur's Gate 3 is a really interesting take on computer RPGs. It is what Larian have done is they have taken Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, which is the most recent edition of D&D, and basically tried to one-to-one adapt it to a PC RPG, which is different than what they have done in the original Sin games. Those games are like their own system. And so they feel very much like they're almost closer in some ways to something like Fire Emblem or something when you're in the combat. They're not like Fire Emblem, so that's not what I'm trying to say, but they have like their unique video game systems that they developed for it. Whereas Baldur's Gate 3, and that it's causing some division, because Baldur's Gate 3 is you could read the D&D 5th edition rulebook and basically skip the tutorials to an extent, because like everything you can see, they surface all of the dice rolls. Everything is happening as if a dungeon master is explaining it to you and you're making choices. And it's really cool because it allows you to stretch the systems in a way that computer role-playing games haven't really done in ages. And you never really could do even in the Infinity Engine games. So you can do things like try to jump from one place to another that you're not really like, who knows if you can get there or not. And if you make the roll, you do it. And if you fail the roll, you don't, kind of stuff. And it means that like I had an early encounter where it was like, I'm going to try to do a perception check to understand more about this thing. And I failed it. And it pops up on the screen with a 20-sided die. It says, here's what your target is. Click the roll button. You click the roll button, the die rolls, and you either pass or fail. And like, it's very interesting the way that stuff works. And they do a good job of not making you go like, shit, I should save scum this. It's more like you get different results basically based on this stuff. Yeah, so cool. It works really well for me. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed with the combat because since Original Sin 1 and 2 were designed to be video games, they designed the combat systems to be very video gamey in that it's a lot of like, I have a wizard that can cast a fire spell, and then I have another, and I can cast a fire spell on this patch of oil that they've conveniently laid out to be beneath this monster's feet, and then they'll catch fire. So there's a lot of that kind of environmental stuff, a lot of elemental stuff, whereas this is much more, you are now in a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition encounter. So it is like you are playing as a ranger who uses a bow. Roll a 20-sided die. You're trying to roll a 14. And if you roll the 14, you will do damage. And so tactics matter, but the dice rolls are really important. And it is not the kind of game where you're popping, at least early on, you're not popping abilities all the time. You're running up to people and attacking them. And I like that because that's kind of the roots of my gaming experience. So it doesn't bother me that I'm kind of like, oh, this character's turn, 80% chance to hit, and they missed. End of turn, next character. But I think it's causing some people who are more Divinity fans first, who are not because I play tabletop role-playing games too, where I do this with friends every week. And so I think it's kind of had a little bit met a little bit of derision from people who wanted more of a creative Original Sin 2 type take. But I don't think that would have been as compatible with the setting, because this is really a RPG setting. I would say story-wise so far, it is fucking wild. Like that game has a very good character creator. And then you... in the opening cutscene, a mind flayer, which is like a walking squid person that does like crazy psychic stuff to people. You're on like a mind flayer ship, which is like a
Stranger Things
living ship. Yeah. And the mind flayer, you're like in a pod, and a mind flayer comes in and puts a weird, gross worm in your eyeball. And then it like crawls into your head. And it's, the idea is like in 3 days it turns you into a mind flayer. That's how they make more mind flayers. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, you're still in control of yourself, and you can like, you have some psychic ability. And like, I won't get into too much about the way it goes so that people can discover for themselves. But like early on, I made a dexterity check to remove a brain from a head that had the top sawed off, like in a surgical sense. It was real fucking gross.
Sounds real fucking gross.
I managed to succeed in the dexterity check to remove it. I don't know how much more gross it would have been if I had not cleanly peeled it out of this person's skull.
If you'd failed that dexterity check.
Did this like zoom in? Did you get like an up close and personal
yes,
look?
Very up close and personal. Very up close and personal look of the sawed off head, and of my character gently, dexterously reaching his fingers around the inside of the brain and kind of like sucking it out of the head.
Thank you.
It is.
That's an interesting side effect of like the visual fidelity that we've gotten to with games, where these games that have traditionally just been pulled out views like Diablo or like these RPGs, Divinity, Planescape, or whatever, Baldur's Gate, where you're normally just like isometric third person, but now they can just zoom in real close. Your character can look really good. Yes. And
it's a very high fidelity, gross. And it gets weird after that with the brain, and it's interesting. And I don't want to.
Is it like cinematic, or are you choosing to zoom in here, or?
No. So the way the dialogue is very much like a Bethesda game in the way that it or Mass Effect or whatever. It zooms in for you and is kind of framing conversations in that way, which is fine. It works fine for this. I was a little worried about that because I like the classic Infinity Engine sort of style that Pillars of Eternity does, where it remains zoomed out and you kind of see the scene as they're talking. But in this case, it works because the visuals are generally pretty high fidelity. I will say that this is early access. I haven't mentioned that yet. I definitely recommend waiting on it if you are like wondering whether it's worth playing now. I think it has the first act of the story and it feels like a full experience, but there's definitely like animation. I would assume that they're going to be taking a pass on, because like there was a couple of moments cinematic moments where I was like, wow, this looks goofy. This does not look like they are. This looks like placeholder animation to me. And so
it is early access. So
yes. Yeah. And I'm not holding it against it because it's very much early access. And there's like whole races and classes that haven't been implemented yet. Right now, it just has very simple classes, and which it may always have pretty simple classes, because Dungeons and Dragons is obviously the like kind of fighter, rogue, ranger, wizard. It doesn't have like shadow thief or whatever, like that kind of stuff is not present. But there are source books for D&D 5e that includes more advanced sort of like almost Final Fantasy like jobs that you can spec into, and I think this game is going to have some of that stuff later on. Right now it's pretty basic. Doesn't even really have, like, you can't play an orc yet, which I assume they will put orcs in. No, yeah, it doesn't have. It has Githyanki.
Oh, okay. Those are like the time traveling orcs. Okay,
yeah,
ride dragons, and
but
shit.
they look more like aliens than orcs, really.
So they don't have noses.
No, they have like weird, I don't know, snake noses, kind of whatever. But you can play as tieflings, which is what I'm playing as. It's the other beast race. But then it's just like humans, dwarves, halflings, and elves. And orcs should be in that game. I mean, half orcs and orcs are a big part of that lore, so you should be able to play as one. They just haven't implemented them yet. And so I mean, I think the reason I decided to go in on it is I've never done let me get a really early access game and check in with it and play it through its development. I've never really tried that. And I'm not sure how deeply I'll stay engaged with it through the period, but I was kind of like, you know what? I'm going to take a shot at it this time, even though, maybe it would be a better experience to wait for 1.0, but I like Larian a lot. I know I'm going to buy the game eventually anyway. It's full price and early access, so more reason to wait if you're not sure. But sure. It's cool so far. I'm excited to put some more time into it. I've heard that your party is like total assholes all around. Like,
so you're not people. Making your party, they're pre-made.
No, Baldur's Gate, historically, you make your character, and then the other characters are like, they have stories and stuff. They exist in the world. In the Icewind Dale series, you make the whole party, but and that's always kind of why I preferred Baldur's Gate, because I like having the unique characters like in Mass Effect or whatever. And that's the case here. And apparently they are complete shitbags, which is very funny. And I'm interested to see that. They're like, if you do nice things for people, they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And that is a nice sort of change of pace from Baldur's Gate. Has always been kind of, I don't want to say morally gray, because that's cliche, but it has always been, it's not necessarily a series that's about being a shiny hero. And to see them lean into that is enjoyable. The two characters I have met so far are definitely kind of assholes. Although I suspect one of them maybe didn't make it out of the thing that happens in the beginning. But
I'm looking at the website because I was trying to see if there's a roadmap for what their early access stuff is going to look like. It does not appear to be.
No, it seems like they're just adding the story as it is completed, and then adding some more character creation options like classes and races. That's my impression, and then fixing bugs, obviously.
It's also been cool watching them talk about how, like, oh, this is wildly successful. We didn't expect all of this response.
Yep.
How do we handle this?
Because they've been doing this since Original Sin. Like, Original Sin 1 was kickstarted, and that sort of started off the Larian Renaissance. Was the Kickstarter for Original Sin being really successful. And that when Original Sin first came out, maybe it wasn't in early access. I think it was, though. Either way,
I don't know if Original Sin 2 definitely was.
Yes, but Original Sin 1 might have come out as a 1.0 release. However, they ultimately made a ton of changes to Original Sin 1 and re-released it as the enhanced edition. And it was like a night and day reception. Originally Original Sin 1 was kind of like oh, it's good if it's got great writing and it's good if you're really hardcore into CRPGs, but it was kind of a mostly positive sort of situation. And then they took a bunch of feedback and re-released the enhanced edition, and it put it over as like, oh my God, this is one of the best RPGs ever at the time. And then Original Sin 2, they just did a full early access thing for it. And then they still did an enhanced edition a year after they put out Original Sin 2 and
They did do early access for Original Sin 1.
Gotcha. So
And
they're
I played the original release of it, like after it was out of early access. I didn't play the enhanced version, but I never finished it either. I think got real close though.
Would you say it was a night and day difference or a Icewind Dale difference?
Nope. Nope. You tried.
It's Baldur's
anyway,
Gate.
Did
It's close.
you try?
I tried.
I don't know if you tried.
At least it was Baldur's Gate.
The thing I want to get across before we move on is Baldur's Gate 3's intro is super fucking wild, and like it has all the weird stuff. But then like basically the opening area is you're on this Mind Flayer ship as it's hurtling across the sky with dragons like attacking it and literally like sticking their heads inside and like biting off pieces of the ship. And
Rad.
it's fucking awesome.
That sounds pretty cool.
Why are you selling me on this game?
I know,
You're saying
I'm
like,
like-
oh, you don't need to play. I'm like, well, what if I did play it?
Yeah, that's how I got here.
I have been missing playing like D&D because my D&D friends moved away.
The only counterpoint I will make to you playing it, Andre, because I think I'll play it eventually too, is that it's not currently eligible for Game of the Year.
That's true.
Yeah,
I've
And
kind
I've
of
still
That's the
got
only
Waste-
counterpoint.
Yeah.
The only thing
I've still got Wasteland 3 going, and I'm
Yeah,
really
I think
enjoying
I'm going
that.
to wait till 1.0, but you're selling me on this.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
interested
like,
too.
I definitely think too, you don't need to play the first two games to understand or
Good
enjoy
to
this one.
know.
I'm going to go back and play them again next year, I think, because I love them and I'm nostalgic for them, and I haven't played them in 10-ish years, 10, 15 years. So I've forgotten a lot of, I mean, I don't even remember the story of what happens in BG2. I just remember that it was fucking rad. So they're really good games, and if you have an interest in, but they're also like D&D 3rd edition. I mean, they're like
Second edition, I heard, for like the first
I
one.
don't think
Maybe?
that's right. I'm pretty sure it's 3rd edition, but I could be wrong. Anyway, point is, current D&D is like, you want to do that, here's a difficulty, roll this die. It's very, I don't want to say simple because there's a lot of math that goes into it, but they've basically like,
Flexible.
there's this like funnel of math that you come to understand over time. And then the actual action point is like you roll one die and look at its result compared to a number. So it's very approachable. Old D&D is like, do you want to do a thing? Okay, so you need to roll 2 of this die and 1 of this die, and then cut their numbers in half, and then that provides you with a modifier that you'll then apply to a roll of 2d8. But you're also trying to like, you roll the 2d8, and then it's like, okay, so you've succeeded, but now you need to check the degree by rolling 2d4, and it's just very like, what the fuck? Things like THAC0 and you want your to the better the armor, the lower the armor class on it is into negatives, which doesn't make any sense. And it's not even as simple as, oh yeah, negative to the enemy's hit roll. That's not even what it means. It's a lot. So I would say that's the bigger barrier. If you're interested in the story of BG 1 and 2, which are great stories, watch somebody else play it.
I might do that,
along.
honestly. 'Cause I don't have any of that nostalgia for playing it. So
Range Touch is a Let's Play group that is Cameron Kunzelman and what are their names?
Michael Lutz.
Michael Lutz and they don't put their names in their Twitter profiles. I only know them on Twitter.
Fred Durst, we'll say.
No, not Fred. Oh God, I don't want to watch Fred Durst play Baldur's Gate. Anyway,
I do.
I do.
Look, only if there's someone there to punch him in the face all the time. Look up Range Touch on Twitter. They did a really good Let's Play of, I think, both Baldur's Gate games, but at least Baldur's Gate 2, and that's a great way to experience that game now, because it's definitely kind of, unless you like me like to dig into incredibly mind-boggling systems that are, you wonder how the fuck did anyone ever come up with this.
Okay,
It's better to watch it.
So let's say Fred Durst does a Baldur's Gate playthrough, and every time he rolls a dice, he just starts going rolling.
Yep. Yeah.
Eject that man into the sun. the hearing about that story about the late great Van Halen and Fred Durst. There was like a they had a feud, and apparently Eddie Van Halen pulled a gun on Fred Durst at one point.
Oh yeah, wasn't it because he took one of his guitars or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Fred Durst is an asshole. Anyway,
well,
listen to Deftones instead. Deftones is good.
R.I.P. to Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, that's Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
I do like how the takeaway from Baldur's Gate is R.I.P. Van Halen and fuck Fred Durst.
Yes. That's how I like all my stories to end.
All right. Well, that was a journey from. Okay. Well, now we're here, and I'm here to tell you about this little game called Solitaire. Have y'all heard of it? Solitaire? Anybody?
No. To explain it, what is it?
All right. So, like, you got a deck of cards, right? You got a deck of cards, but you got nobody around. It's just you.
Oh shit.
You got like an empty table. You got nothing. It's
Is there a
just
game you can
empty
play with
room.
that?
There is, and it's this game called Solitaire. And it's like, you're putting the cards in order, like ace to king. But you gotta stack them up, and they're all like shuffled in a weird way. It's like a puzzle.
So it's like Go Fish?
It's like Go Fish against yourself.
Go fish yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's our podcast title. So yeah, okay, but we all know what Solitaire is.
I really mulled that one over. I gotta say, I was like, do I say this? Do I not say it?
I was thinking
on the
it,
table.
so I'm glad that you said it.
Yeah,
Because
no, it's good.
Said what we were thinking.
So the Solitaire Conspiracy is a new, unique take on Solitaire, where you've got.
Okay,
I think it's unique.
This isn't actually a legit question. Is it like Klondike Solitaire?
I don't know.
No,
I'm about to
it is
explain
not.
what it is.
Okay.
Klondike Solitaire.
I don't know what
is like
Klondike
standard
Solitaire. I don't know the
solitaire.
difference. I know it's Spider Solitaire.
It's a Mike
but-
Bithell game.
It's Mike Bithell game.
yeah.
Thomas was
Okay.
alone. John Wick Hex.
The subsurface circular. The other one.
So, Solitaire Conspiracy is the way the Solitaire is set up is basically down the middle. You've got your 4 spots for the aces, and then on either side of those 4 like middle bits, you've got the cards divided in like 2 piles, and you can see all the cards at all times. So you've got like the stack on left side, right side, 4 down, and then in the middle you put the aces, and then you go 2 up to king. Where the Solitaire Conspiracy begins to differ from traditional Solitaire is each suit has like a special ability that is activated from the face cards. And this is going to get very complicated very quickly. In Solitaire, normally you can only put like a card on a matching card, or like on a card that is below, right? I don't remember how to play Solitaire. So if you got like a 5, you can only put it on a 6. Yes. Is that normal?
Of the opposing suit.
Yes, depending on the rules. Yes.
Yeah. So in this one, you can put your card on any card that is higher. So I could put a 5 on a 9 and like build out that way. You don't want to do that because like then you're just like cutting off. Yeah. So so I can put my 5 like on the outside where I'm moving cards around to like shuffle down to lower spots. So I've got like a 10, a 7, and a 6 like in a row, and then I can put like a 3 on top of that 6 to make the row longer and reveal like an ace, and then put that ace in the middle.
It's very different from Klondike Solitaire.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it
The
sounds
layout,
like.
the card layout is extremely different. Because in Klondike Solitaire, you have panels that you can save cards in to reveal more cards from the deck, but you don't have.
So
yeah,
all the cards are visible to you and are in like the piles in the stacks.
Right.
So you're trying to you're trying to like move cards around to get to the aces and the other cards.
It's
and
more
once
of
you
a
put
puzzle.
An ace in, yeah. Once you get the ace in the middle, it activates the face cards of that suit, which then have special abilities. They could.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it actually
So,
it sounds a lot like Golf Solitaire if you've ever played
No,
that.
I haven't played that, but
Yeah. I've played that and it sounds similar.
Yeah.
So then you've got the so say I don't remember what's called. It's the Solitaire Conspiracy. All the suits are like based on like member like groups within a secret organization. So you've got one group that goes in, and when you put the face card on top of, you can put a face card on any basically spot if it's powered up, and one group will like blow up that row or that like stack and then just redistribute the cards randomly onto the other stacks. Or like it's going to shuffle them, or it's going to put them all in order from lowest to highest or highest to lowest and stuff like that. So you're managing all these abilities and trying to, play Solitaire. It's a really interesting, unique take on Solitaire that really makes you like have to think differently if you're not used to playing different types of Solitaire. And the inclusion of the abilities really makes it tricky because there are 8 possible teams, but you're only ever using 4 at once at most. And you're going through like a story mode that is just giving you random like missions with different team groups. So you never know what 4 team or what 4 suits you're going to have. So what abilities you're going to have and whether they'll work well together or not work well together at all.
Interesting.
Also, this is an FMV game.
Oh, sick.
yeah, starring Greg Miller.
Greg Miller.
What?
Yes, he's the main character that talks to you. I saw this in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's like Pardon.
I actually just bought it because that's actually the main reason I want to play it.
It's $10. It's good Solitaire.
Yeah.
Okay. You're selling me on this because it sounds fun.
It's hard to explain, but like once you start playing, you'll be like, oh, I get it.
It's also,
I think that's the good thing with a lot of those kind of solitaire card games is that it looks like a lot, but then you figure it out. But
it's also like as long as a movie too. It's not.
Yeah,
From what I understand, it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, perfect.
Because they on the store page they talk about like what's stopping me from asking for a refund after I finish this game, and they talk about like, oh well, in the past we've released these short games and we found that 92% of people keep them. So we just trust that our fans tend to like to reward good game design.
awesome.
It does have a skirmish mode,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's got multiple like modes that you could keep coming back to if you want to play like a different take on Solitaire other than just like standard Windows or phone Solitaire. You can do like kind of like a wave based thing where you're like timed and you're trying to solve things fast, and they increase the difficulty. And then there's like the pick your team and try and best yourself and solve things quickly and all that kind of stuff.
I just want 2 hours of Greg Miller yelling at me portraying a character in an FMV game because
No, like I was already thinking, this sounds pretty good, and then you mentioned that the main actor was Greg Miller, and I was like, ooh.
I like him as a person, but sometimes when I listen to him on podcasts, it always hits a point where I'm just like, man, shut the fuck up, because I don't agree with something he says, which is a very banal, like I've never had a like fuck this guy thing, but him just talking at me in an FMV game sounds really fun.
It sure does.
It's funny because he's like super spy, but he's like, man, I'm locked out of the system. I need you to do the stuff. And it's silly. It's good fun. And it's a nice way to spend an evening or 2, depending on how much solitaire you want to play. And they do ramp you up in a nice way where they start you with only like one team. Like, okay, here's how here's how it works. Here's how the abilities work. And then they slowly stack up. Like, okay, here's a second team, a third team, a fourth team, stuff like that.
So
I just bought it, so
if we're done, I'm going to play it after the podcast is done. If we're done with that game, I have a tweet that I need to read.
Okay.
This is not really breaking news, but so 1 minute ago, it's not 35 seconds anymore. John Cena tweeted,
"You can't see me.
My respect for this group continues to grow. Always give back, always credit, stay humble, work hard, listen, appreciate, and acknowledge those who help you.
At
Cheers. Cheers. Hashtag BTS. Forever a class act. Hashtag we are not 7 with you."
Okay.
all right.
I mean,
John
sure.
Cena's an army.
BTS rules.
It
but-
is appropriate that the Marine would join Army.
or very inappropriate depending on who you ask.
Yeah, true.
I'm sorry. I wasn't even like on Twitter to ignore the conversation we were having. I was literally switching to it and then closing the tab, and I saw this John Cena tweet. It was like, BTS, what? Anyway.
Okay. He might have been hacked. But
no, because it reads like a John Cena tweet. That is that man. That is how that man communicates with people.
What if? Oh my God! What if WrestleMania, John Cena comes out and BTS performs his theme, and he raps with the rap monster?
What if? I mean, I don't want to support the WWE at all, but what if BTS wrestled in the Royal Rumble? I think is what is the real question.
Don't hurt those sweet boys.
Yes, agreed. I mean, I don't want them to risk injury, but also they're very athletic. So,
All
They
right.
probably do a mic drop.
I mean, they would have to wear headset microphones the whole time, and then they could take them off at the end.
I don't think they could pick the Miz up.
All 5 of them together, sure they could,
Oh yeah, sure, maybe. Yeah, they could do a mic drop.
or all 5 of them. I don't even. That's not even right. But if the entirety of them, if they were all in the ring at the same time, they could absolutely. I mean, that's the joke, right? Is that they would.
They all enter as like number 6 or something.
Yeah, and then they're the last ones to be eliminated by Roman Reigns.
No. Then Roman Reigns' life is ruined by Army.
I hope so. That's not true. What am I saying? I like Roman Reigns. He seems like a good dude.
Oh God. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our game talk for this week. Come back next week where I somehow have gotten deep into Baldur's Gate despite telling myself I will finish Wasteland 3 first. Just, it is what it is.
I wish that game
Let's move on to news.
clicked with me more. I played it for like 2 hours and it just didn't. I could tell that it was good, but it just wasn't hitting for me for some reason. Hopefully
it took a little bit for me to like really get into it, but I'm enjoying what I'm finding now. Like the humor's hitting for me.
Yeah.
It might not hit for everybody, but for me it works. Now let's move on to news. And this isn't on our list, and this has been kind of happening for a while now, but since we're on the topic of WWE, I'm reminded of it. Yo, fuck the WWE, taking away their talents, Twitch like platforms,
Oh my God,
their YouTube, saying like we're gonna control these, and you'll get like part of it, but it's gonna come out of like it's basically gonna make up some of their pay. So it's basically what.
It's like tips.
Okay, I don't follow wrestling at all, so I hadn't heard of that, but that is some serious bullshit.
It's their, I can't remember what it's called, but my understanding is basically like their residuals and stuff. Like it basically goes into that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
Like there was a company
Honestly,
that
fuck
was
that.
doing, was it DoorDash? Was like when you tipped, it just came out of, it just made it so DoorDash paid the driver less if it like covered only part of their like minimum wage or whatever. It's basically the same idea.
It's
which
like
is
the way
fucking
tips.
garbage.
Yeah. I am shocked that anyone still works at the WWE. To be frank, like,
Yeah.
other than the fact that I guess that they're putting on remote shows. I mean, if it weren't, I don't know that I don't see how they could get away with this if there weren't COVID happening, because there's enough independent promotions out there. You would think that a lot of these people could go make a living. It might not be the same kind of living, but make a living doing work as an independent. And it is just, they are just like one of the most trash entertainment companies in a world full of trash entertainment companies. It's incredible that WWE continues to sink lower and lower. They have no integrity whatsoever as an organization. And it's like, I feel really bad for the people who work there in like production roles and stuff, who it's just their job. And I mean,
There are some fantastic people who work there.
Yeah,
but the
exactly.
company itself just fucking eat my ass.
and like, they're so bad to the people that work for them. They're just so bad to them. It is shocking to me how little they care about the people who make them money.
Yeah, it's a really, like, I don't know. They have more leverage than ever right now, but
Yeah.
also they're in a more precarious position than ever right now too. So
I just hope as soon as the wrestlers themselves can start to make a living elsewhere, that they just start jumping ship faster at a faster rate.
Yeah.
I mean, they have been jumping ship, but do it faster.
but there's also only so many lifeboats out there, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, depending on, I mean, maybe it would run into the same problems, but there's places like AEW potentially can keep getting bigger. So,
Oh yeah, but you know, they also have their own stuff that they've been doing, so it's not like everyone can leave. And you know, not everyone will leave, but
totally.
yeah, it's it is like, you know, they're big names, and if they just, you know, there's this mass exodus of talent into like the indie scene, then that screws over a lot of people, and it, you know.
Oh, I know, but I don't.
It's
I guess
complex and shitty.
I guess what I'm getting at is I don't see how people are getting screwed so hard by WWE right now. And I mean, also on the back end too, we don't hear about it as much because it doesn't relate to the wrestlers themselves as much, but they do all kinds of shit to their employees internally too. And so as much as it would fuck over a lot of people are getting fucked over so hard by them right now that I'm kind of like, nah, I would love to see them just crumble. It would suck for people, but also it's the kind of, their business practices should result in them failing. That's like how the system's supposed to work, because they're so awful to the people that work for them.
Yep. All right. That's our yearly fuck WWE chat, and now time to talk about our regularly scheduled news. There's some more PS5 news this week. Through a couple different avenues. We got some Japanese YouTubers going hands-on with the console, playing some games. They did not get to see the UI.
This is weird.
Yeah.
And there was something else. They couldn't use the share button.
That kind of makes sense to me. But
yeah,
because it may not be connected to anything right now. Like it could be like placeholder UI that is in place because there's no infrastructure like launched for that yet. Yeah. So that's less weird to me than not being able to see the UI. But
yeah, the main thing was they had like a pre-built like thing that was like, here's how you use the controller, and now here's Astro's Playroom or whatever game they were playing.
Yeah.
So that didn't seem like anything that crazy came out of there.
Other than
the
the thing was like the size of that guy's whole body.
Yes.
They're gonna say the mysterious nut.
That was whatever. I've seen bigger nuts than that.
No.
What?
Just squirrel over here.
I don't feel like there's much more to. I mean, it's a console. It plays video games. I don't know.
One thing, I don't know if this counts as separate news, but they also did that video with the full teardown.
Yeah, they did the full teardown,
which is cool. I love that. That was awesome.
Actually, that was really cool, and it also showed just how easy it would be if you wanted to like do maintenance on it yourself. Like they actually showed themselves pulling off the warranty sticker.
Yeah. Well, they also like that was, you know, like they were doing the teardown. So of course they have to pull off the warranty sticker, but they were pulling out the, or, you know, they're like, here's the vacuum spot where you can vacuum out the dust.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And so it did answer some questions like, what's the storage expansion deal? And that is, you can put in a PCIe NVMe, PCIe 4 NVMe drive to the slot inside. You have to open up one of the big slidey wings or whatever on the side.
Yeah, they like snap off. I think they called them fins. I don't know.
Whatever. It's just shark ass motherfucker. So you can put in an extra drive, which means the 865 gig drive that is the default that comes installed is soldered to the motherboard, which does raise, I don't know, maybe some concerns about like longevity and like if that fails. It shouldn't, but if it did, you had a problem, then suddenly...
They also showed the board, like they showed the PCB and everything.
Yeah.
And the way that is set up, other components would fail before that. And it makes sense why it's soldered there when you actually look at how the board is set up and how like the SSD controller is set up, because they actually specifically showed the controller from like the hardware sense, the hardware controller.
Yeah.
And its proximity to where the actual SSD is, and where that SSD is also in proximity on the board to like memory and also CPU. So it was actually pretty cool that they showed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just the big thing is, and like, it's, I guess like with a computer, it's more of an issue. Like with a console, it's whatever, everything's backed up in the cloud and it's all like, you know, all you have is game saves. And
if it's under warranty, then Sony has pretty good warranty support from my experience.
It's more just like, you know, if you lose something because it fails or whatever, but that would be years down the line.
Yeah. And I thought that the general like design of it was really quite solid from looking at, I don't know as much about board layout as you do, Alex, but my impression of it was that it was really smartly put together in the ways that it seems like it being big gives it some pretty solid airflow.
That heatsink.
The heatsink
is
massive.
awesome. It's so cool.
Huge.
I love huge ass heat pipes.
You put that on the back of a boat and you'll just go.
Yeah. Like that thing is going to be quiet.
Yeah.
From what they
it looks like it.
It looks like it's going to be very quiet.
And liquid metal.
The liquid metal is their the connection, the contact point between the heatsink and the CPU. So like you're not going to have to replace that.
Yeah, because it won't dry out the way that it can.
You will have to protect John Connor though.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
John Connor away from that thing.
The liquid metal is going to go out through the heat pipes, through the vacuum holes, and all these different PS5s, and meet like the Iron Giant in one spot, and then turn into the Terminator.
If I was a movie executive in the year 2020 and I would be like, liquid metal, you say, let's have a Terminator come out of a PlayStation 5. The next movie is like John Connor playing a PS5 and then suddenly PS5 turns into a Terminator.
I would name my PS5 Max. I don't know if that reference makes sense to anybody here, but
no.
Or Wolfie. Nothing. No Terminator 2 fans in the house.
No.
You know when he calls him and he's all like, "Oh, how's Wolfie doing?"
Yes,
Wolfie's
I know.
fine, so.
I understand the reference. I just don't support it.
And the last bit of PlayStation 5 news this week is they finally came out and gave some more concrete details on backwards compatibility.
There's like 8 games I can't play.
Yeah, and it's most of the games are kind of like.
And I think one of them was like, one of them's the Afro Samurai game that was real bad and got like canceled basically after release.
One of them is an old touring trophy game.
Yeah,
I like never heard of these games.
Game.
Yeah.
Yes, one was at We Sing, I think.
We Sing, yeah. So it's like I was looking at that list. I'm like, that's fine.
I'm out here worried that like, oh man, if I want to get back to Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, is that not going to play on the PS5 because it's not a Sony first party game? Then no need to worry.
They have said that like some stuff might encounter bugs or not run 100% right, but I imagine newer stuff will be fine.
Yeah.
I imagine if anything, it would be like weird, obscure, like maybe indie stuff from like early in the generation. But yeah, hard to say. But when they said 99% of games, they really meant it.
We did miss one important piece of the teardown video. It also has weed storage. The PlayStation 5. When you take the little foot.
Oh,
put your weed in there.
Right. Okay. Is that why everyone was so happy about the design of that thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
There's a very funny, I think it was Steve Kim, but there was a very funny video. Again, I think it was Steve Kim posted to Twitter that played the teardown in reverse, and it had subtitles that were like the musings of this guy hand making the 1 millionth PS5. It was extremely funny. It's extremely funny. And he goes, "Oh, you could put your weed in here."
Actually, this one more thing about the teardown reminds me, because those sides snap off, how soon do you think it'll be before we start seeing 3D printed like replacements?
Like day one?
Immediately, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you want 3D printed on the side of your PlayStation 5?
Huge
Brendan
dong.
Fraser.
Brendan Fraser on one side and Hanyo on the other side to honor your character.
My Final Fantasy character, yeah.
Yeah.
Huge dong, I see.
Yeah.
How about you, Andre? What do you want on the side of your PS5?
Shaped, not just like the standard wing with something printed on it, but
just to make it so complete.
Yeah, no, you want like just like a bad dragon dildo on the side of your PS5.
Oh,
What you want is you want it to be one contiguous dildo. So like the left side is like the
I don't
balls,
like
and
I don't
part
like
of the shaft.
arrow through the head.
I don't like the use of the term dildo here because we're not talking about
no.
This is just a
device.
piece of This is just a piece of art.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
there's nothing
massive.
sexual about it. It's just a piece of art.
But yeah, you could do it like
that's-
the arrow through the head, but just like a dick sticking through
Jesus
Exactly,
Christ.
and it's
wanna know-
massive.
Real question: is the idea here that those fins are just dust covers? Then
I guess.
And
Yeah. I mean,
aesthetics,
well,
I
it
guess.
needs an outside.
well, it just seems like it would be a lot smaller if it didn't have those enormous fins on it. So,
I
like,
don't-
is it
I don't
a
know
bad
if they-
thing if I take them off and put them away and then hide it?
I don't
Well, then
know
the
if
dust
they're
will get in.
affecting. I don't know if they're affecting airflow either.
That's what
Because
I
of
mean. That's kind of what
the
I'm
weird
curious
way
about.
they're shaped.
It's fine. I mean, I don't need an answer right now, but it'll be interesting to see when it releases if like it's viable to run it in a ventilated area without those fins on it, because the thing is fucking huge, and anything to save a little bit of room would be worthwhile. But it may also be that the foot has to have a connection point on the wings. I don't know.
So, they also showed that stand, by the way.
That's what I mean when I say the foot.
which
The
comes
thing
with
that clip- yeah.
things.
Yeah,
And you have
clips
to
onto
use it.
Yeah.
There's no whether it's horizontal or not. You have to use it.
Yeah. But
A little weird, but okay.
but Andre, what would you put on your vanity PlayStation 5 side plates?
Oh, well, I didn't even think of this.
How about Allison then for until then?
Could you repeat that?
Put J-Hope
Oh.
from BTS.
Yeah, what you would put on your vanity PS5 wings?
I am like, could I make the sides really, really big so it's like a weird misshapen X-wing?
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I have a real and better answer that's not vulgar. I want the grimoire from Nier. That's what I want. I want it to look like that. And then I want a little speaker plugged in that makes it talk and call me like a piece of shit every time I start it. Like how he's a huge asshole to you throughout that game, and it's very good.
Turn it into like the Sydney Opera House or like some modern architecture. It's like sitting on its, like in the horizontal
That would be
position, and
very
then the
funny.
top is just the Sydney Opera House. It's modern art.
Sony should totally sell faceplates.
They don't need to.
No, it'd be fun.
Are you putting Goku on yours?
That's too easy.
All right.
You could do like
too
maybe a
easy.
Shenron like coming up out like Dragon Balls and Shenron. Maybe that'd be pretty funny. Because there's so many options because of like the multiple orientations. But yeah, that'll be fun to see. I bet people get real creative with that.
It's almost as big as a PC tower, so get into
Almost.
case culture.
Yeah, there are PC cases smaller than that.
Yes.
So
Oh, by far.
yeah. Anyway, let's see. Next up, more Sony news. Ghost of Tsushima has a new patch coming up, which will introduce the multiplayer Legends mode and give you the ability to pet dogs and recruit them, I guess, and
dog
have
army.
them as allies. But only in New Game Plus, which is bullshit.
That is very weird.
So I don't want to be a dick because I think Ghost of Tsushima is fun. Who the fuck is playing New Game Plus in that game?
That's true. Like
That is a one and
Do we
done to
want to
me.
platinum it? I don't know.
What if I told you you could have a huge fucking army of dogs if you do?
I don't know if that's enough for me. I didn't even get past the first region. I got bored before I
me
even
too.
made it to the second region.
There are always people who are playing like New Game Plus in these games.
It's true.
It's always
It's just-
yeah.
so.
It's just I didn't even realize it had a New Game Plus. When I saw it had a New Game Plus, I was like, why? It's a well-made game.
Yeah.
It's good. It's solid.
Yeah, I don't think it's like
Sorry.
a good game, but it's just like, yeah, I had the same thing happen to me too, where I was just like, oh, this game is cool, and then I got bored pretty quickly.
But did you say that they're adding some kind of multiplayer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never
it's like
saw
a
that.
4-player like co-op, like you fight demons, I think.
Yeah, it's like fantasy. It's you fight like Oni
There's a
and
spirit dog you can
it's
have.
like,
Yeah.
it's like a horde mode.
It's like
it seems more like Left 4 Dead or something where you're moving through levels and fighting stuff with it's probably just environments from the game. But yeah, and I think there's even like progression stuff where you play, it's class based and you level up and maybe even get new equipment or something. It sounds cool, but I don't see why I would engage with that when there are so many other multiplayer things right now to play. Like, it's neat that they added it, but
Yeah, it's a value.
It's got 2-player story missions and 4-player survival missions, as well as a raid.
it's weird. Yeah. They're almost framing it like it's some kind of service game thing, but it's like,
Weird, yeah.
it's too slight to be a full service experience thing, like, I don't know. It's very strange. But I mean, the game's fun to play. So
I never played it, but so that's all cooperative multiplayer.
Yeah.
Do you think that game would benefit from competitive
No.
multiplayer?
I don't think so.
No.
so.
It's
Not from the gameplay.
it's not deep enough from I mean, it's good, but
The Assassin's Creed multiplayer was fun when they had it, like the competitive stuff. Like,
Yeah,
it wasn't great, but it was neat. It'd be
Like in
similar.
Brotherhood?
Yeah.
but the AC multiplayer is so different than the way the game works. Like the AC multiplayer is like hide and seek, basically.
Yeah.
It's you don't get into open fights in it. Like you can't take your swords out
Yeah.
and fight each other. And that's like, I know that there's stealth stuff in Ghost of Tsushima, but it's the combat would need to be a factor. And I just don't think that it is really.
I mean, then you
I
end up
guess
with
you-
something akin to like the For Honor.
Yes, which I think is great, but I guess you could have the stance changes be maybe an interesting wrinkle for a PvP mode. But I would just say anyone interested in that should play For Honor because For Honor is still very good,
Yeah.
and they continue to support it. So
Or if you want a competitive multiplayer game with stance changes, play Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast.
that's always a good decision, and I think that's on Switch too. So
Or Neo 2 for something more recent.
it has competitive multiplayer.
Neo? No, I
Okay.
didn't. No, sorry, just stance changes. But yeah, all right. That's Ghost of Tsushima. More on the Sony front. Their launch lineup just got a little bit tastier as Bug Snacks is revealed to be launching on November 12th, the same day as the PS5. Hey, that's good news. And they announced their voice cast, which has a lot of heavy hitters.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Which I think is really funny.
I assume Sony must have given them some cash because I didn't get the impression from the success of Octodad that they would be super flush.
Yeah.
So Sony must have said like, "Hey, make this thing cool. Here's some money."
Like this is like Yuri Lowenthal Spider-Man is in here. Who else?
They released a clip where it looks like some of the Bug Snacks just say their own names, very much in like a Pokemon style.
They very much do, yeah.
And
They do,
I
it's
didn't know
good.
that. That's pretty great.
The Giant Bomb video of it is like 30 minutes long, and shows some of those features, including that they say their own names, which is good.
It still seems like a game that I'm not super interested in.
I'm
even
just
though
like,
the aesthetic,
I'm so excited for it.
I like the aesthetic of it. I don't really have a lot of. There's a part of me that I'm ready for thinking about Bug Snacks tweets to end. Sometimes I scroll and I'm like, I understand. Lots of people are continuing to think about Bug Snacks.
They got like this is just, I'm just looking at this list of their voice actors, and they've got like substantial people as their voice actors for the Bug Snacks.
Yeah.
Like
that
they
part's
could have
awesome.
done that. They could have done that themselves, but no, they got like proper voice actors to do Shishka Bug and Razby and stuff like that. Like, okay, sure.
I think I will play it, and it does look like it's going to be a really great or a good thing, you know. Like, so I don't mean to like suggest that I'm like fuck this game or anything.
Yeah, but also should be noted, it is coming out November 12th for PS5, but also PS4 and PC.
Yes.
So
Yep.
All right.
I'll play that on PS5 maybe, which is a weird thing to. I don't see why it even needs a PS5 version, but sure.
christen your PS5 with these sick Bug Snacks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next news story. There's been scuttlebutt. There's nothing confirmed, but this has been reported that xCloud is coming to iOS next year, despite Apple's attempts to say absolutely not. You got to do a separate application for each game you want to stream. They're going to be doing a browser-based solution, much like Amazon has planned for Luna. Or is that available yet? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
Not yet.
And I've heard no one talk about Luna
Yeah, it kind of flopped.
since the announcement. But we'll see how that goes down the line. But yeah, so supposedly in an all-hands meeting, Phil Spencer revealed to Microsoft employees that xCloud will be coming in 2021 to iOS via the browser.
Yep.
We'll see how long Apple allows this to happen. I don't know how they could stop it.
They can't. That's the thing.
Blacklist xCloud on all Apple devices through a software update.
There's ways, but they would be very, very intrusive and would
Exactly.
mess up a whole bunch of other apps too. So they shouldn't.
And I mean, if they went after this solution from Microsoft, they're already being scrutinized for antitrust stuff, and
Yeah.
I think this would be a blatant. They'd basically be throwing their court position if they were to do that. And
Oh yeah.
I figured that this is how Microsoft would eventually get around it. When I saw that
Yeah.
Luna was going to be doing that,
Yep.
I'm surprised, to be frank, that Stadia hasn't already figured this out. Like Google hasn't already figured this out with Stadia, because
They can't even figure out how to put Stadia on their own products.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
But
that's dumb, but yeah.
it's hey, I mean, like Spencer pointed out that like it's not the best solution. People would prefer to just push a native app and have like a library like that. But if it works once you get in game, like I mean, if it's easy to full screen it and then it works with your connected controller, then I don't see the problem with this as the solution.
Yeah. There are technical weirdities you get into that. When I was making games 7 or whatever years ago, we exported them to HTML5 when that was pretty early. Like that was right when people were talking about, oh, Flash seems like it might be dying, so let's build these games for HTML5 because they're meant to be browser games and they're meant to live in perpetuity. And there are a lot of quirks with HTML5, such as like if you want the audio to work, you have to have the user touch it at least once in a browser. Like you can't just start the app or like the program and have it have audio. Like they actually have to interact with it before it will play any audio. So like there's probably a lot of concessions they will have to make in order to get it to work in a browser that you don't have to worry about in a native app. But if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Like that's what matters.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll see how that goes when it shows up. Hopefully all that goes smoothly because xCloud should be places. Did they change the name of that or is it still xCloud?
They still call it xCloud.
Okay.
xCloud, yeah.
All right.
I think it's out there, isn't it? As a part of Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if they, I don't know, Xbox Game Stream or something. I don't know. It's NVIDIA Game Stream, so they wouldn't do that.
They it still doesn't have every. I think it's technically still in beta. It's open, but it's still in beta, and it doesn't have every single.
It's got like 100 games or something.
Yeah, not even that many, I don't think. But that could be
still a lot. Yeah, I don't know, but it's it's still it's a neat idea. It plays more games than the Xbox Series X right now, maybe. Allegedly, probably not.
Might already play more games than Stadia.
Yeah, with that, I think it probably does. All right. Well, next story. Avengers dips below 1,000 users, active players on the PC, which that's low. The game's been out for a while. There's not been any content updates yet.
There's no reason to play it right now. So
so we'll see.
The game is bad.
It'll be interesting to see what changes when the first kind of expansion stuff, like the new characters and stuff, comes out in sometime this month, supposedly.
I thought it was supposed to come out by the end of September originally. The first bit,
and then the game was a little bit messy. Which
a little bit,
was to be expected, but
So I don't know. I thought their like war table right before it came out was like Hawkeye's first part of Hawkeye coming in September, but maybe I'm misremembering.
I don't know. It was supposed to be like weeks within weeks. Sounds like the stuff's coming soon, but
yeah, I'll hop back in and play that content. I still think the game is good from a core gameplay perspective. It's just that the end game content is a brutally repetitive loop of the same shit you've been playing, and there's nothing unique about it. It does not have any narrative content. It doesn't have any kind of unique design. Like, I don't think it's an Anthem scenario because I think that the story of that game and playing through it and stuff is good in a way that Anthem was not. So, and
I just wonder if people are going to stick around, and if they're going to keep people putting in money to keep them generating the content.
It's definitely a question for me because originally I was like, oh yeah, I'll buy all the battle passes, but I haven't finished the character cards or whatever that came with the game. At this point, I will check out. I haven't uninstalled it. I will check out the Hawkeye stuff when it hits.
That's kind of what's going to keep me or bring me back to play it more is that content, but that's kind of it right now.
And they need to provide. I don't give a fuck about. I have skins I like. I don't give a fuck about unlocking more of them and calling cards and shit unless there's compelling content for me to play with other people. Like that at a certain point, it's like if the character looks, if the character looks cool enough to me, then fine. So that's the big question mark for their monetization is I am going to come back and play whatever story content they add because I like their characters, but I don't see a reason to purchase a battle card or a challenge card for Hawkeye if I like the base outfit that that Kate and Clint have, and am not going to play with other people. And I mean, what's the point? And you're talking to somebody who's put $25 into a gacha game in the last week. So it does not take that much to get me to spend money.
Well, you did spend $70 on the game, as did
That's
I,
true.
and
Yeah.
I probably won't look at it again until I have a PS5, which at this rate, who knows when that'll be.
And that's a big question mark too, I think, is, I could see if they get cross save in place, which I don't know if they'll ever be able to do because stuff is tied to local saves. So it's not all living in the cloud. So maybe that's just a pipe dream. But if
Such a bizarre choice.
it's a terrible choice in my opinion. But if they were to implement some kind of cross save, I would almost be willing to purchase the game again on PS5 if it runs well there, and that's where people that I know are playing it. Because the one
Probably be able to
person,
get it real cheap.
yes, the one person that was playing it with me on PC, I think he probably has it installed still and would still play with me if I brought it up. But we played like 2 or 3 weeks pretty heavily together every couple nights, and then it totally fell off once we realized that the end game was shit. I didn't even finish technically the post game story because the stuff it started asking me to do, I was like, this is crashing on me. It's frustrating. They're starting to run worse for some reason, like 20 hours into the post game, and it's getting worse as I play it. So that's why I put it down, because it was like, how is it possible that this game that I've really enjoyed is now getting worse from a technical perspective? So yeah.
Well, all right. I got 2 more pieces of news. I'm going to switch the order here and say Crucible, Amazon's weird arena shooter thing, kind of like third person.
The game that came out.
Game that came out and then uncame out. Went back, came from released to closed beta. That's not the way that's supposed to happen.
Yep.
And is now development is ceasing. You will still be able to play the game. I think there's like one more update that's coming out that's adding like custom games and some other stuff. You'll still be able to play the game in custom games, but everything else is basically going away. There's not going to be any new content. Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting thing that Josh Sawyer of Obsidian Entertainment said earlier today, that originally Bezos, from a Wired story that was published a while ago, Bezos indicated that their games initiative was a way that would aspects of their games initiative, I don't know, I don't have the full context of the story, were designed. The point was make people go, oh shit, we need to be on AWS. Like do games where it's like, oh, 10,000 players in one server. People are going to go, oh my God, I need to have that server infrastructure for my website. And Josh Sawyer was like, just pointing out in this tweet thread, you can go look it up for yourself, but that anytime you're designing a game because you want to show off a tech feature and sell something else, you're clearly already just pack it up. That's a very cynical and bad way to approach game development.
Well, and I mean, Crucible wasn't even that. Well, like it wasn't some massive we've seen that kind of game before.
That's what Gears of War was. The first Gears of War, like that was used to sell Unreal Engine to developers. So so I don't entirely agree, because I think Gears of War is good.
Well, and you'd have to read the whole thread. I'm kind of paraphrasing. It's
okay. I haven't read the thread. That's fair.
But I mean, like the first tweet is, I've had to work with publishers who think this before, wondering vaguely at potential tech features, and a vacuum is the red flag of truly disconnected and creatively bankrupt. Of the truly disconnected and creatively bankrupt, the goal isn't experiential. The goal is to show off, quote, something. I would also argue that the first Gears of War is not a particularly good game. I know that people attach to it, but
you're showing off like, okay, we made Unreal Engine. It's 4 games. Make a game with this thing that we, the same thing we used. Whereas, Amazon Web Services, like it's, that could be anything. And you can get 10,000 people in here, but do you have the money to make a 10,000 person, money and resources to make a 10,000 person, game server? Like
totally,
probably not.
I think more a better example than Gears of War might be Crackdown 3 and their initial pitch of it's going to have to use the cloud because the destruction's so crazy. And that stuff never even made it in the game. And the game that came out was
And
it
it was
looked
in the
like
multiplayer.
Was it?
I think so, because like
Either
you had to
way,
be connected to
it's
like
not
online to play multiplayer, but
It's not a good game.
You have to be connected online to play multiplayer.
yeah.
Isn't that just the way it works? If you're playing multiplayer,
I think that's how it works.
Well, no, well, because the original pitch was when the Xbox One was always online, and so like all the stuff will be in the cloud. But then when they had to change and make it not always online, the cloud stuff got pulled from the single player. But I believe it was used in the multiplayer because you're always online for that.
I don't know.
yeah.
What I will say is that no offense to the people who worked on Crackdown, because I'm sure that they worked very hard on it, but creatively bankrupt would be a very good way to describe Crackdown 3, unfortunately. So, yeah.
What, putting
Crucible
Terry
is dope.
Crews in a video game doesn't count as creativity?
yeah. Crucible
He's
was
not
never
even very good in it.
Crucible was never good. So like that, and you're totally right. And in that, if it was just meant to act as a tech demo to sell people on AWS, it failed because no one wanted to touch it.
And I don't know that that is the context of this wider story. It could be that Bezos is talking about other games. The point I think that is being made there is that Bezos is the guy at the very top of this, and if that's the way that he's approaching game design on any level, given how hands-on he still is at Amazon, it's probably doesn't bode well for Amazon Game Studios as a whole. So hopefully New World doesn't suck, although it has certainly some shitty tropes in it already.
It is worth noting that the studio is not being like shuttered and those people not let go. They're being moved around to other positions, either on the New World or other games that may have not been announced yet. So
I don't even know that they are necessarily, it's hard to know how passionate they were about Crucible from a like, this is our baby perspective, Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't
have, I think we've talked about it could have been just like, here are 6 games on a blackboard and you're going to make one of these. And
originally that game was pitched as more of a battle royale with a high player count. I don't think it was ever 10,000.
Was it 10,000?
No, I don't think so. But it was originally pitched as a battle royale, and then they missed that boat and then kind of pared it down to being this like squad based thing. And it had some interesting ideas, but The Cycle, another game being made by an indie studio, does all of the things that Crucible does, but like 10 times better, and is actually kind of interesting. And so there just was I don't think there was any future for that game. And I know there are talented people who worked on it. So clearly it wasn't just that it was made by a super inexperienced team. But
wasn't it the Double Helix people?
I think so.
Well, all right. And our next, our one last news story, unless I think of something else, is there was a big AMD event this week where they showed off some processors and gave the tiniest taste of Big Navi. And they said, "Hey, listen."
Doesn't it? If it's Big Navi, wouldn't it be like, "Hey, listen"?
No, it's still super high, but it's just way louder.
Oh no, I don't like that at all.
That's like the worst of all worlds.
Like the beginning of Mouth Dreams.
Oh yeah, Yahoo indeed. Yeah, the Big Navi thing. I like how Lisa Sue actually called it Big Navi. They're like, yeah, our community started calling it that. Now we just call it that. And
okay,
it was funny.
And what were your takeaways from this, Alex? You watched it, I assume.
Yeah, I watched it. The new CPUs look good, and the AMD communities online fucking flipped their shit because they raised the prices by $50.
And made real good processors. So
I cannot fathom why the community is flipping their shit. They have like 20% performance gains over the previous gen.
Because it's not as much of like a kick dirt in the face of Intel as it would be if they kept the prices super low. But the prices are still below for the performance you're getting. But
Yeah, they're still good. Like, it was just kind of like almost embarrassing watching how crazy people were getting about it.
oh
Like,
yeah,
it was
What,
getting
PC
to the
gamers
point-
embarrassing themselves.
Yeah. Dying on hills which don't make any sense. Like, they were talking about it as though it was like this huge slight on them as a community, and that AMD had failed them, and like, how dare they do this to their core audience. And it's literally like a $50 change for a chip that has
Yeah.
more silicon in it. It's like it has
They
more
are. They
raw
probably
materials.
already have like a 3950X or some shit, and they're just like, I need the new one. Like,
There are
why?
people complaining about not having enough white hairstyles, like white people hairstyles in Baldur's Gate 3's character creator. So PC gamers, just a unique brand of dipshit asshole.
Oh, yeah,
certainly can
it's
be.
unique brand, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I would argue largely can be, but also, I mean, I'm not trying to say every person.
Oh,
I am a PC
no,
gamer.
it's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It me,
Unless
PC
yourself.
gamer.
Yeah, unless you're self-burning. But no, the new CPUs look good. I'm building my PC. I'll probably get one of those because they seem very solid. But wait for benchmarks is the thing I will always say.
Always.
If anyone's interested in this, any kind of technology, wait for the benchmarks to come out, because that'll give you some kind of real world context of how it would work.
It seems crappy that they don't let the review embargo up before they're on sale. Like, it seems like same day is usually when they're
Last year with the 3000s, these are the 5000s,
Yeah.
by the way. Which is
yes.
funny. But those benchmarks went live, I think, a week before the launch. So they might
did
do it this
they?
time.
Okay.
Yeah. As
Maybe.
far as I've heard, the reviewers have already benchmarked them. It's just that they're waiting on the embargoes.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Steve from Gamers Nexus said something about how that they did that, and same with Visual Foundry, maybe.
Oh,
Like
weird.
That they,
Okay.
That they,
Well,
yeah, that they were able to.
well, yeah. If they let the I thought I saw Linus Tech Tip saying like, they were on sale in like November 5th or something. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
And you'll
November 5th.
probably expect the review the same day, is what he said. I think.
Yeah,
which
they
I
said
was like, really?
None of them know when the actual embargo's up, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there, really.
Yeah. Hopefully they're ahead of time, but yeah.
Maybe nice, but no, they look good.
Okay. And then they gave a tease of the big Navi stuff, and that was looking decent performance wise, right?
It was very impossible to tell from what they
Yeah,
were
I guess.
showing.
Yeah, they
Like,
didn't actually show.
they
They
didn't
just
show-
put some graphs up or something.
not even that. They just showed some gameplay of Borderlands 3, or like
Oh,
whatever
really?
the,
Okay.
whatever the benchmarking tool is in Borderlands 3. It looks like
Okay.
it could be running similarly to like a 3080 maybe, but it's impossible to say.
And without price or like any of that stuff, it's hard to tell.
Yep.
Well, all right. Is there any other news that anyone wants to talk about? Do you want to say?
Get out there and vote.
Well, yes, get out there, vote. Condolences to the folks at GameSpot and other
God.
CBSI
those
properties.
other
Oh, man, that's
CBSI properties that are
rough.
being sold to Red Venture Media,
That's been
who
insane to watch.
there are a lot of folks being made redundant, losing their jobs. That's going to be happening, I believe, until the 13th, which is just bullshit. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
God.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
that they would
awful.
Do that.
Yeah, but yep. What do you expect? I guess.
Not that.
So hopefully people land on their feet, and this is real tough time to be going through that. So hopefully things turn out okay. With that, I think we'll wrap up this episode. We're under time, people.
I know. What are we going to talk about for 45 minutes?
Okay, so remember that scene in
no.
Igarashi?
Oh no.
All right, this has
Okay,
been episode
bye.
142 of the Gaming Fix podcast on October 10th, 2020. I have been your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite noodle. You can find me on Twitter at Coolslaw, COOLSL4W. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at Fix Podcasts. And you go to fix.space to find like a podcast on all the platforms of your choosing and like some reviews. Podchaser.com/gamingfix to leave us a review, or iTunes. You know, that's all good stuff. Pat, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at PJCPlays.
Allison?
You can find me on Twitter at WRITERSERENYTY.
And Alex?
You can find an article I'll be writing in a couple days probably on fix.space.
Okay.
So do you think when they do the reanimation of, there's a lot of people with like scenes with like crushed faces from baseball bats in Higurashi, and they don't show it in the original, but I don't know if that's because it's like too much, or if it's like the animation fidelity wasn't there. I'm really curious if they're gonna like show some fucked up like caved in faces in the new one.
Probably.
That's gonna be real rough.
Great. Really making me want to watch it. Stay wet, gamers. I think there was something else I wanted to say, but you made
I was
me
gonna
lose it.
say you could fade it out while I'm starting that thing, but we have to get the stay wet gamers in there. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Recording has been stopped. And goodbye, stream.